the chapters, from the planning board, because that's the recommendation of this committee. There might be other planning board members that don't want to remove chapters that are already there, or maybe they have a different priority. But if you're telling me under the grant that we have enough funding, and we have enough resources here to look at all of those chapters and update all the chapters, that's a different conversation.
We do have that funding.
And my point being is there enough in that funding that is also going to lead to, I do think model ordinances is important. Because there's several ordinances that have never been updated since 1996 for land use. 1996.
Quick question. So I appreciate checking with planning board. I appreciate all the different committees that may have a lot of interest in updating their chapters, but question back to Bart and Angie. Are there different funding sources for the different chapters? So for example, the transportation, is that UPWP or?
We have enough. That's capital reserve.
So you do have, it'd be great to know what the funding source is of the different chapters, if there's a time commitment there and all that kind of thing.
I have that on the next slide, which I'm happy to go for. I think that
She is so good today. Isn't
Yeah, look at
that good?
Just one more question too, just because I think it's relevant to what was being said. Is there a summary written anywhere, basically the active master plan chapters and the recommendations made in those versus what actually has been implemented by the town? Like something that shows what we said versus what actually happened?
That would be great.
I can go through that. I don't think there's nothing that I have on record that has shown. We have what's been recommended, but not necessarily a matrix saying what has been achieved. So that's something we can do internally.
An understanding of the 20% or 80% of
that's a good recommendation.
What's been written.
Yeah, if something's been completed, who's the responsible party?
We have a conservation. I think at their last meeting, they have gone through.
That's where I got the idea.
And Bart, we'd love to do that with you because as part of our, baseline, which is what we consider this green time, is baseline. So existing data, future projections, demographics, transportation maps, all that is understanding what has been accomplished. So to your point, Sam, that's where we celebrate what has been accomplished, and also gut checking whether it's actually still accurate. So if you remember in the survey, the last survey question in the housing section is actually gut checking the 2015 housing goals, and if those are still relevant, or issues. Actually, they weren't necessarily goals, they were trends around senior housing and some other things. If those are still accurate and those are still things that you want to move forward, we shouldn't be reinventing too many wheels here. So not that we really want to pick up, we want to make sure that it still reflects current status and where you want to go, but we also don't want to reinvent too much. So sorry.
Just one more thought, because I'll speak because open space is where I'm at, but the current open space is actually open space plan, and so it's very specific and has very specific tasks. And I'm thinking about we as the committees, we go forward in the subcommittees, we're going to be enmeshed in it. I think the hard part is then it goes to a new committee like the planning board or a new board, and those people are all busy, and so I think the master plan has to have enough specifics that the board that gets it, or committee that gets it, doesn't have to okay, now we have to come up with the specifics, because that takes a lot. That's a lot of, I think, what is going to help drive it forward.
That's why I would really be pushing that at this level and with this expertise that model ordinances come out of, they're as part of the recommendation. The recommendation, if we look at some of the chapters, is not to look at the ordinances and update them, which doesn't get done. It's here's a model ordinance that the board should, be looking to implement.
That may be, though, slightly out of the scope of the work, because typically there may be recommendations, with an idea, but to actually draft an ordinance, you're sort of now, I'm just going to say, in my mind, scope creeping a bit. I want to hear, when I look at the master plan, I definitely want to see recommendations, and if there's a recommendation to, create an ordinance to just allow storefronts with elephants, well, that's different. Okay, so that's an idea. I'm just throwing out something.
Which is-
obviously, I'm not,
yeah.
I do not have an elephant fetish. Maybe that's not obvious, I don't know. But anyway, I'm just, if you're, getting a little bit into an area where I don't know for these guys, but I saw some nodding, so.
Yeah, it's not necessarily our expertise to draft ordinance or on all staff. And it does tend to take a lot more time, and we would want to make sure we're really delivering the full breadth and
Yeah.
depth of this, than focusing but we could do best practices. We could look and see, to your point, like where some model ordinances are that you could replicate for sure, because that's right there, that should be part of our best practices anyways in the implementation chapter, which we didn't, this is on the bottom here, but it's not a chapter that we're expecting this group would look at it, but you wouldn't necessarily always be developing it. A lot of that work would be done on our end through the teams that are working on each of the chapters. So there might be some that we're like, oh yeah, there's definitely a recreation one that we could be putting in there, or something around historic resources for an ordinance change. So that would be on our team to look for best practices, but not to write one, unfortunately. I think it's a little tough because we don't always have that expertise on staff.
Angie, what is the difference between green and yellow?
Yep, so green are the background, so your existing conditions, looking at data, celebrating the successes, seeing what you've done. It's where you're doing your surveys and your engagement on kind of the visioning for the chapters. If there is a workshop involved, the purple are all like specific engagement opportunities, so workshop and survey. And then the yellow, and you'll see some here, and I'll go into the contract for that, is actually writing the chapters. So we have 4 grants that we're working with, 4 funding sources, right? 4, yeah.
Invest New Hampshire.
Yep,
Open
4.
Space, yeah.
Housing is a HOP grant, Housing Opportunities Program. That's part of Invest New Hampshire. That is specifically to write the housing chapter. That is due at the end of June. So we have a tight timeline for that, which is why it's first. Open Space was also a grant, and that's due, I believe, at the end of May, which is why you see writing of the chapter, which is the yellow, in these two months. The Downtown Riverfront Plan, I believe, is through 2025.
Yes, June 25.
But it's Plan New Hampshire, and there'll be a charrette and a specific chapter associated with that. So it's spread out a little bit more. We're probably going to do some background stuff actually along here, but maybe some of the more intense stuff.
The riverfront's also coastal resiliency.
That's right, coastal
Yeah.
resiliency, thank you. So we've been talking about where that's going to look, and actually it's probably going to be more in the September timeframe, but unfortunately I forgot to change it. Well, we met with them this morning, so real-time stuff going on here. So we'll obviously keep this updated as we go. And then the 4th one is all of the others. So energy through water, existing and future land use. This bracket right here is all funded by the capital improvements plan.
What's
So-
the grant for the open space? I don't think you mentioned the grant.
It's the water, isn't it? Water source protection?
DES, source
Yeah,
water protection.
Source water protection.
I always know them by the acronyms LSWP. They should do local social water protection. So DES, and that one we've been in, as you know, we've been in talking about that one and working on it since August. So we have quite a bit.
Is there a reason water resources is not under that grant, or is it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how that was chosen to be stepped out, but yeah, good question.
Because if it's probably more, I mean, that's kind of a key to the source water protection, is the aquifer, drinking water and
Yeah.
watersheds, so.
That was recently, we can probably get more information on why it was separated. I think that was recently done in 2020, updated, the water resources chapter. So, and I think Kyle worked on that one.
Yes, that's
So,
right.
But from the grantor's perspective, it might be interesting to know.
mhm.
So we're not going down totally, that we aren't missing dealing with what the grant asks us to do.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. That's a good question. The others, I think we're more just a conversation with the town, so, but again, it's really the preference. And I've seen, this is a lot of chapters, by the way.
Well,
But it's
to
also
my
something
point,
that you could
Yeah.
come back to, a couple points I've heard, that you could come back with some very specifics, some big specifics, so that they don't need to know everything about the chapter, but understand kind of what the to-dos are, like what's the blueprint for that chapter. And you could combine some of these too if you felt that they were similar enough, that especially once you get down to data, but we've pulled a lot of the data already. We're trying to prepare for all sorts of needs to do these existing conditions, which is, 3.5 months basically of background research and exploration with you all, inviting experts in, which I'll get to. I know keep talking about that with the master plan teams, but we anticipate other people than yourselves being able to help with this, which is why this isn't it's a deep bench of experience that you all have, but we don't want everybody to feel like they have to come to a committee meeting to be able to contribute. So having special guests or experts come in and contribute to your process will be really helpful. Like the Arts and Arts, Culture, and Tourism Commission has a strategic plan. It's amazing. So having them come to a meeting and inform you about their process and all the work they've done would be really valuable. And there are others that
Energy.
Your DPW director could be helpful for community facilities. I mean, we actually have taken this approach with other communities, and they've found it beneficial because then you invite them in and then they're done. Like they don't have to come to a lot of meetings and wonder what their role is, and they could come back several times. But.
Because you are adding new chapters that we don't have currently, and then there's current chapters that we have that I don't see on the list. And one thing we talked about, for instance, Ellen, at the planning board level was we currently have the natural resource chapter that was scheduled to be updated and our open space conservation, and the planning board's recommendation was that we were going to actually merge those two chapters. But I don't see natural resources up here unless it's by default. Where does it fit at this point under there?
It could easily be in the open space.
Open
I also
space?
think the water resources has to be, that's kind of what, they're all sort of interrelated. I mean, I think you could work
So
all
should
those
we
together.
pull all those together just to make sure we're not losing sight of the chapters that we currently have and that we wanted?
Yeah, I would, but.
So a question for the group and specifically for Angie and Bart again. So I think I brought this up last time, but that feels like a year ago already for me. How is it that we envision this product, the end product, to be? Because we know there are master plans that are like 350 pages, there are master plans that are 50 pages, and that are more of very data. They don't go on for pages and pages. I think I recommended looking at Auburn's. And okay, so
You did mention
that
this.
wasn't in a dream. That was real.
Yes, that was reality.
Yeah, we've looked at several master plans for a couple of communities. In Newmarket, you all expressed you wanted it to be succinct, and data is still going to be in there, but it can be an appendix. I mean, there's lots of stuff that's going to be analyzed, both at your community workshops, here in these rooms, with the teams, with yourselves. That doesn't necessarily need to be in the plan, but it's informing the decisions, and it's informing your recommendations. So we're anticipating maybe 5 to 10 pages for each chapter, especially the smaller chapters don't necessarily need to be really heavy. And that's going to be visual, it's going to be focused on action, it's going to be focused on recommendations, and there will be data to support it. So trends is how we're kind of calling it out, is each section will be a trend, and then the data associated with how that trend is supported. Is it through data or a map, or is it through, trying to think of some other ideas. Mostly it's been data and maps so far. What we're hearing in surveys, there's lots of, you already have, I think, up to 30 responses, and not just responses, but comments in your survey. So we have almost 90, actually almost 100 responses now in the survey, but people are still commenting at the end. So people are really passionate about this and being involved, and so we think there might be some good nuggets for that. But we've seen lots of master plans that have taken this approach. Hooksett, Haverhill, Mass, Stratham.
Stratford. Yeah.
Yeah,
North
Goffstown.
of- yeah.
Goffstown has a real short one. I think.
I'm sorry, Goffstown, that's what it was, not Hooksett.
Not
Yeah.
Hooksett. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like Hooksett.
No, I apologize. I knew it
Couldn't
was
be.
in that region. Goffstown was the one that.
Goffstown
It's
is like
three
four
pages for 4 pages for each.
Yeah, and that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'd want a little more depth. That was the one thing that we didn't think it got into enough of the background of why some of the recommendations were listed. So I would suggest a little longer on that piece, but we can decide that as we go. We have some templates that we're designing right now based on feedback.
And I know, from many discussions and board discussions, et cetera, that the thing is, people always say the same thing. I don't want this just to sit on the shelf. I want this to be a usable guide, and I want this to be accessible to people. And I think I don't know, I think it's great to chat again with the planning board to see what is their vision for this, what is it, what do they see, and if Bart and Angie can convey some of the ones that they think, sort of reflect what they think you would enjoy, then I think that makes a difference, as well as the other committees. I mean, there's so many committees in Newmarket. It's what's important to them, what's critical.
Would some sort of a workshop with the planning board in the planning stages be appropriate to inform and get information?
Yeah, I really do, because I think, again, because the planning board has to adopt it, you want to get the buy-in up front.
Yeah.
Right, and direction, I think,
Yeah.
that direction from them, and maybe a presentation to the planning board and the feedback up front would be appropriate.
I would agree with that.
Do you have a work session coming up?
We can have a
Can
work session.
Definitely add one.
Oh, you can, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if your members would be, I know some people are like 2 times a month is enough.
Well, we only once.
We only meet once a month,
Oh, okay,
which
well.
isn't enough. So, yeah, we would definitely have a workshop.
Mhm.
And that's a
So-
good idea, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
Right.
You're right, and then these have to come back to you. And we're working in several communities where the same thing is happening. They're doing chapters, they're adopting them individually instead of as a full master plan. And that's what I think you had said that the will of, or the wish of the planning board was. So that's a lot of work. I mean, over like a year period, basically. But to that extent, you're really diving into something very specific too. Like natural resources can be, 5 of these chapters: open space, recreation, water resources. I've sometimes seen historic resources and natural resources, but mostly not. So at least 3 of these could be wrapped into natural resources. But we also have a contract to adhere to, which is your open space contract, and that needs to be. We have to send it in by the end of June. I'm sorry, by the end of May.
So, and I think, did you say 4 of these are grant-driven?
There are 4 contracts that these all fit into.
3 of them
so
are.
one's really big.
Okay.
It's the CIP, but that's our contract with the town.
Yeah.
It doesn't. They don't have an
Right,
end
right.
date. The other 3 do. Yeah. Luckily, there's a little more time for the downtown riverfront plan one, but
So housing and open space are the most critical, and then everything else.
pretty much.
Yeah, we after conversation too, we think housing, open space, and vision would be
And
the
vision,
first
yeah.
3.
Housing and vision,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Because then the
Yeah,
vision
so
will be the.
I think it'd be nice to have this list prioritized, both by what that you need to have done because of the funding.
This is pretty much
And-
prioritized except for vision, so I mean, I just bring this up. I kept it in order of the way that it was in our work plan, just to keep it consistent.
Yeah.
I think water resources I think it has to go up with open space because source water protection is water resources. Would you agree with that, Lindsay?
I would, yeah.
I would just put them together as
One chapter.
either integrate what what the water resources already says. If that's such a new chapter, you don't need to do too much. But things change in just even 2 years, so I'm sure there's some stuff that can be
Yeah.
retooled there.
Yeah, this is helpful to know now because we could wrap it into the workshop in March and still be done with open space. So I see that as definitely being a possibility. There's a lot of matching that we can do.
So Alan, just so I'm hearing properly, water resources, natural resources, open space, do you like to group that all
I would.
together?
Yeah, you can't really separate them, otherwise you're going to be talking about the same stuff in different
Yeah.
chapters. We're very wet. We're very wet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So when do you think we could go back to the planning board?
January.
Okay.
And would you consider downtown riverfront part of the economic development? Or how is that downtown
I think
riverfront?
it touches a lot of different aspects. Resiliency, climate resiliency, economic development, recreation.
Community facilities.
Okay, so all
Arts.
sorts of things.
Yeah. It's kind of a, yeah. That's why I envision it.
So this, I understand the statute, we have mandatory chapters that are required. And then there's optional chapters under the statute. And then there's the ability to also, because the optional chapters are actually identified in the statute. I don't have the RSA with me. But then like downtown riverfront plan, I'm pretty sure I'd never read that as an optional chapter.
You would have to fit it in.
But,
Yeah.
so I think more to the point, does the downtown riverfront plan actually work its way into, is it a separate chapter or is it incorporated into other chapters?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I understand you have it segmented out because you also have a grant just for that, right?
So one thing that Stratford did that I really liked, so as Sylvia knows, we also do a lot of age-friendly work in the Stratford
Yeah.
region through a chat grant, Communities for Healthy Aging Transition. And what they did was, the age-friendly was a theme for all the chapters. So it wasn't its own chapter, although there were components to one. And then if the chapter had a synergy with age-friendly, then it was recognized. And so I see that even just hearing Bart rattle off some of the things that are going to be in this, I could see some of these recommendations, being interspersed in this with still a report, because you're going to get a report from Plan New Hampshire. That's what they do, and it could be an appendix, but wrap those things into the appropriate chapters as well, or in addition,
Because, I mean, yeah, it's part of arts and culture, it's part of recreation, it's part of historic resources, economic development, I mean.
Yeah, there's probably gonna be some transportation, because you mentioned 108 today to them.
Yep.
When we talked about DOT, so existing and future land use, it's probably gonna be sprinkled throughout the entire plan, so.
Right.
Is there a concept of like step-down plans or initiatives in the master plan, like we have these main chapters and then there's these step-down things, because that seems like an initiative, right? The downtown riverfront plan is an initiative of how we're gonna figure out what we wanna do there, and even the regional coordination sort of is that way a little bit, but I don't know, can you do that and then the master plan have that kind of concept, or?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that could be a possibility. I know, as Angie just talked about, themes as well.
Right.
I think Portsmouth did that as well in their master plan update. I think there's a couple others that were recently brought to my attention. Brattleboro, Vermont, they might have done the same thing. So that's another path we can take too, is identify key themes, and then they're not necessarily a chapter because the statute drives it, but we can incorporate them as themes throughout, and
And is the arts and culture, is it being segmented out only because we now have, is it a commission or a committee?
It's a commission.
Okay. So something like that, why wouldn't that just be incorporated into our cultural and historic resources chapter? And that we, as opposed to, because right now we have a cultural and historic resources chapter, in arts and culture would really fall under that chapter, as opposed to giving the commission its chapter.
Yeah, I think that's we could definitely do that. I think it's just right now, we identify we want as a major focal point throughout the update. So if we take historical resources and art and culture and put them together, I think that's a possibility. So I don't see anything wrong with that approach.
I've seen a lot of communities do
Yeah.
that, that's their chapter, and that was our last chapter too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of themes that are overlapping with all of them, but that one especially, you see cultural and historic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think for the workshop, so that'll be one of the agenda items for that workshop. Chapter construction, and also maybe it's this committee that recommends the themes coming out of those chapters. So if we do approach it that way.
So is everyone on this committee good with kind of consolidating some of these chapters?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. Sounds good.
Do you want us to take, oh, sorry. do you want us to take a shot at that? Based
Yeah,
on
I
this
think you have enough
conversation,
input,
and
you know, that from,
Yeah, I think you've
Does
already
everybody-
heard it, yeah, natural resources is now open space and water resources, and cultural and historic is existing, and it has arts and culture and historic resources.
in downtown Riverfront is really a theme within multiple chapters, wherever it's gonna fall.
Yeah,
And seeing even that grouping could be somewhat dynamic. When you have the planning board workshop meeting, there might be some further adjustment from the planning board
Right.
members, but
So chapters we're removing is population, and when we met at the planning board back in '21, we wanted to remove that. That made no sense. Community facilities, I guess we were gonna remove it, but we really didn't understand that that was really needed in there because of the CIP.
Oh,
Correct? So that
Yeah.
should stay.
that's
All right.
pretty common.
And we did want to add the energy conservation, which you've got that as a separate chapter. And then we wanted to integrate into each chapter in the 2025 update, the implementation, as opposed to having a separate chapter, that each chapter would have an implementation. Does that make sense from a planner's perspective?
I've done it that way, but also had the guide at the end as kind of a takeaway, almost so that you don't have to use the entire fan, but that's, so I've seen it.
So under the implementation chapter, is there like, you know, there's implementation, the implementation chapter has the implementation for for all of the chapters under one location?
Yep.
As opposed to going to open space, here's what you want to implement.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's almost like your work plan going forward, so that that's the one chapter that you can always just take with you. It's 5 to 10 pages that has every single action, and then
Okay.
and how to do it. Like
Yeah.
what are the resources, who needs to do it, how much does it cost, what's the timeline,
Okay,
all the sort of
great.
things that you would need to do.
Because there'd be a lot of redundancy, I would think, if it's being repeated in each chapter.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you could also be a little briefer
Okay.
in each chapter too. So we can figure out a way to do that so it's not too duplicative, because I know some communities like to have standalone, like the chapters standalone as well. And I think to your point, Helen, like that they're good for grants, for example, so that you don't have to worry about kind of putting things together. Like the implementation chapter needs to go with open space chapter if it's going into a grant, but it would already be there.
I think it's also important too, because, I mean, this is the 10-year rewrite, right? But it's, I think, within the 10-year periods, the planning board does want to continue and should be updating chapters.
Yeah.
And I think this was just part of an email that I might have sent, but will there be age-friendly elements to this? Is that also a goal?
I think that should be a theme. I think we should definitely incorporate, definitely explore and incorporate that.
What other themes are you considering when you talk about themes?
Well, really, what we can't put into a chapter, but I think climate
We
resiliency.
talk about resiliency, yeah.
I think that's a
pulling,
big one.
Especially for the resource chapters.
Yeah, that'll be a big one. I know we have a chapter for it, but I think you could. So maybe economic development, you could probably do. I know it has its own chapter, but I think that could be a theme. Let's see. Energy, it has its own chapter. I don't know, maybe explore that a little more, but what comes to mind right now is climate resiliency, and then, the riverfront, and also, I would say, I want to say housing, but I know it's its own chapter, but I feel it's just so important that, it should be a theme, or maybe it's called something else, not necessarily housing, so.
We've seen communities use sustainability,
Yeah.
equity,
Yeah.
the bigger things that some communities have created chapters from them, but because it weaves itself into everything, the way to look at a theme would be to measure whether that action helps you achieve that ultimate goal, like resilience, like age friendliness. Everything should have a component, ideally, that is age friendly, that is accessible. Our communities are such now that who knows what, I could walk out of here and break my leg. That doesn't mean I'm 65 or older. It just means now I unfortunately have a disability. So I think it's just important for us to remember that could happen to anyone at any time, and how we're our spaces designed, our sidewalks, our buildings, everything. So it's a good lens.
One of the things we launched last year with Bart, the planning department and the conservation commission was called Pathways for People and Nature. So we're such a small town, we're so built out, we're so wet, but we need to conserve ecologically significant areas. There's still some areas that are significant. We'd like to have pathways for people, whether it's walking, cycling, from downtown, so along the riverfront, but then downtown, uptown, and throughout town if we can, and then to neighboring communities. And at the same time, we recognize that we need housing, and so we that's the purpose of the master plan, right, is to look at everything at once, but I think that theme might be kind of interesting too, because it's hard to talk about it just in recreation, or housing, or open space, because it's a theme that we need to talk about as a community. Can we do this, and do we want to do it? Because it's also, I think, getting people outside, it's equity about people who live in town and may not have access to getting to spaces. You're talking about sidewalks and bike, all sorts of stuff. But anyway, that's just something that's coming from the Conservation Commission and planning. But just offer that up as a...
I love that. I
idea.
think pathways is a great way, and it can also be metaphorical and just creating connections.
You mentioned the implementation plan at the end of the master plan. Does it make sense to have goals and objectives within each chapter which lead into the implementation? And that way they're measurable goals rather than...
That's what we currently have.
That's
On any of the chapters that have been updated in the past, I'm gonna say 10 years, that's
Yeah.
specifically what they've had.
And
in the
did
whole
we
background
achieve
is
those goals?
No, because they just sit on the shelf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm not saying no in general, I mean,
Yeah, no,
but
but that's
when we
always
talk
a
about
concern.
the majority, as far as the next step, what we use the master plan for,
Yeah.
to say that, most of our ordinances relative to, like, the zones in town not being updated from 1996, or the age-restricted or affordable elderly, 2001, that's over 20 years old. And there's a lot that, that is in the master plan that is not getting implemented. So to have a document that's easy and driven and a commitment to get the recommendations implemented is huge. So that we don't
Question,
have
right?
this conversation 10 years from now again.
I kind of have, and this may be taken wrong, but when we say age-friendly, which age are we trying to be friendly to?
All.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've just seen a graying of this town.
Yes. And
It's just changed a lot,
that's why I gave the example
and
of...
the young kids can't afford to live here. So
Yeah.
okay, so it is
Right.
everybody. Well, I was afraid it was like more elderly housing
no,
and more kids who can't afford to live here.
no,
No.
Okay,
everybody.
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, we talk a lot about strollers and, things that, or activities for young kids,
Okay,
a lot of
yeah, no,
communities
if it's all of them,
feel
that's
that-
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a great
it's the
question, though.
notion of
Does-
that a community is friendly to anyone, whether they're 8 or 80,
Okay, yeah,
or you could say 8 months. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's a recognition that everybody has different abilities and different needs, and are we thinking about that in the process?
And the community moves forward with that in mind. I mean, the built-out community or the infrastructure or the open space lands or publicly available lands,
Yeah,
you know.
accessibility. That's one aspect, just one aspect.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen zoning as a whole as a proxy for, whatever, affluence segregation. It's like, if you can't afford to live here, if you can't afford 5-acre lots, too bad, get out of town.
We can name all the towns that have that, right?
Yeah, but it's something that I think that we're now starting to feel the effects of. With all these bonuses, a density bonus for elderly housing, and it's just, no kids in the school district that way, it's a good thing. And it's changed the complexion of a lot of communities and over decades of doing it. We're now feeling it where, whatever little stores downtown can't find
Right.
employees.
And it would, I think it would be great too, Angela, if we could get copies of the, your presentations.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, well, it's on the computer now. Oh, no, it's not, we took it off.
I have the
I'll-
PDF, so I can make
Okay.
copies. Yeah.
Oh, you made PDF.
Yeah, I was trying to
Excellent, oh, that's right. I forgot.
troubleshoot.
Yes,
Yeah.
Any more questions from the committee on timing, time schedule, maybe combining chapters? That Angela and Bart can talk to the planning board about our workshop.
Yes, so basically we give that workshop, have that workshop, and the board will direct us how the committee move forward.
Yeah, I want to have, this is what the
Recommendation.
committee's recommending,
Right. Yeah, so,
does the board buy into that?
yes.
And
There was a mention of regional coordination. I don't know, it might have been you. I think you might have mentioned it, or you or Sam. Is that something that you still want to move forward with as a chapter, or is that something that you feel would
I think that'd be
be
a theme.
a theme?
Yeah, because planning board was going to take it out, not take it out, just not include it. It
But,
was one of
yeah,
the RSA
no.
optionals, and we, right,
So
but
wrap that into as a
a
theme?
theme?
I think that it's a good,
That seems like it goes right along with pathways and creating connections, is regional connections, regional trends,
yeah, definitely a segment of it, yeah.
sustainability, yeah. Theme, it's a theme.
Theme.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure when we're
Yeah.
giving you the planning board a new version of this,
Yep.
that it's, and then to your point, I love the step down, so we'll call it that now, or the Ellen method.
The waterfall.
Waterfall.
Yeah. Waterfall plan.
But that'll be something that we'll be mindful of. We'll figure out a visual way to show that to the planning board so that they don't think we're dismissing anything or not, covering something, but that it's wrapped into something else.
That's a great idea.
Okay, great. All right, well, so we had originally, I'll go over the teams because I keep telling you I'm going to. So originally, the way that we presented this idea to Bart in our contract was, and this is what we've done in a couple other communities, is have, instead of the work all being done here, because we only meet once a month and, there's a lot to be done otherwise, is to have you all break yourselves into teams. So based on your interest, and as you see, this kind of runs the full gamut of the existing ones, minus these two. We didn't put them into a bucket because first of all, weren't sure if it was going to be its own chapter, which now we know it's not, and neither is that. So that actually works out well. So we're already coming up with our themes, but we put these others both for timing and then that they are consistent with each other. So actually, we were very mindful when we thought of that. This same thing is that these would be the ones where you would invite experts to come to a smaller meeting and talk with you about, we'll use the arts and culture as an example because they just had that strategic plan that they created last year. What was in that? What are the guts of it? What's their intention for that? How do they want to implement that? Or for economic development, maybe have a business leader. I know the chamber doesn't necessarily cover you all as much, but is a downtown business association.
Yeah, there is, but it's not that active. It's not super
Deborah.
active.
Oh, it's not that active. Okay. I'll use another example. Like I have someone from Concom come and talk to the whole group that's involved with that team about these issues under Team 2. But again, the idea, or the DPW director come and talk about the community facilities, or the energy committee that is working on the energy chapter. But the idea is to come and talk about the existing conditions and kind of the scenario that they're laying out for that specific chapter. And that'll help us both with data collection and with maps, again, to keep our fingers on the pulse of what is being worked on so that we're not making recommendations for things that are already in play, or celebrate things that are actually being done. And then really just understand kind of what the lay of the land is. We used this approach in a couple of communities, and they liked it again so that they didn't, they still had the expertise on the committee, the bigger committee, but these people could come as they needed to provide their expertise on a specific subject. So these are not by any means set in stone. This was just for reaction tonight. Again, it was in an effort to try to parse us out, but we don't need to do that tonight so that we can, well, it looks like we wouldn't be getting rid of any of the chapters that are actually within a team. So that's good.
Let me ask a different question.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're hoping to expand the committee work to pull other people into the team.
Yes.
All right. So one recommendation I would have, because there's a big focus on the economic development, and then relative to the gateways, is moving that under housing and existing future land uses,
Okay,
and maybe move transportation out to 4.
That's what I was thinking with
Okay.
community facilities
Yeah.
and energy.
I have a
Okay.
question. You thought on economic development is more of a theme? No. That's, because it does touch on a lot of different aspects.
It
Oh.
could be, you could do it that way. It's often its own chapter.
Right.
but
Yeah.
It could also be a
Yeah.
theme, just like,
Just throwing it out there, how people think.
and it
about
may, it may come from like the survey information may also, when, as people, because I always consider this a plan of the people, and depending on how people respond to the different surveys, that might sort of steer what happens as well. But I'm missing the logic on moving transportation and, what was that? What did we just say?
to.
To community
to-
facilities and energy. And
So
then
we're talking
moving,
about community facilities may not need to be in the
no,
master
no,
plan, because
no,
it's-
master plan team
No,
4
just
would
the-
be community facilities, energy, and transportation.
Kind of
As a-
thinking the common theme is DPW is
Right.
kind of in charge of managing transportation facilities as well as the community facilities, municipal facilities in general.
Makes a
So
lot of sense.
it seems like they kind of go hand in hand.
So I'll play a devil's advocate on this one. So I consider that sort of, if you look at transportation as a network versus maintenance, which I can appreciate that's public works, I consider transportation absolutely like connecting the housing. Like if we're putting housing way out, wherever in the outskirts of town, and that's our focus. Well, we're just gonna do housing out. We don't wanna mess with anything in town, just outside of town. How are people gonna get from A to B? And transportation to me is a lot more than just, you're talking about connections with rail trails, connection with transit, connections with road network. So to me, that is absolutely housing. I do understand though the maintenance aspect, if that's kind of where you're going, but I'm not sure what you're totally thinking there.
Not only the maintenance aspect, but also thinking with energy being over there, some of the energy goals are transportation focused in terms of providing public transportation or transportation alternatives that reduce the emissions and car demand on the roadways. So it kind of goes beyond just the roadways with the transportation piece and energy theme. It doesn't necessarily have to be over there. It just, in the conversations that I've heard, community facilities and transportation and energy kind of all have a central focus and seem more linked to me than transportation with housing or land use.
And this was just in an effort to divide them up somewhat equally, again, with a little bit of a similar mindset, so it doesn't, that they don't, I don't think it drives what the content of the chapter is going to say. It's more just, again, synergies between the chapters. That was really it.
So what would team 1 then be?
The
besides-
suggestion was housing, economic development, excuse me, and existing future land use.
Okay,
Yeah, and particularly because the drive, on the economic development side, the drive really is for the gateways, increasing the tax base from a profitable perspective. I
well,
think
the other
that can.
link, sorry,
No, go ahead.
the other link, I can actually create links with any one
Sure.
of these
Right,
together.
yeah,
I know,
I
that's
think
why
we
this
all
was.
could do that. There's trails and recreation, so there's transportation.
Right.
But economic development, we know so many staff wanted or hiring, and so that has to do with housing, and so you can absolutely relate that, so
Yeah,
I'm good with any of it.
cool.
All right, so we're going to move transportation to team 4.
And economic development to team 1.
Okay.
So that's
But
great.
I'd be curious, Ellen, where are you at with keeping recreation under open space and not just water resources, because it's going to be also include natural resources? Should that go under team 3?
I was wondering, because team 3 seems a little thin, just in terms of not that that's thin stuff, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, I'm
Right,
just saying.
but it's now one
It's
chapter,
now
yeah.
one chapter essentially, and so maybe
Yeah, because you also have natural
you could
resources.
put recreation under 3 and have, I mean, you know, as we said, it's all interrelated, but that
Yeah.
would give that team a little bit more.
Okay, I don't have a pencil.
Chew on.
I only have a pen. No more changes after this. I'm crossing out a lot.
Angela's gonna change
have
it and
it
send it to
I
us.
have it all worked out.
Okay, so we're moving rec.
And Sue's taking amazing notes over there.
Yeah, yes, she does.
Okay.
All right, so this is what I'm hearing. Team 1. I was tired of holding, my hand was so
How's
sweaty.
an economic
Team
development?
1, housing, existing future land uses, economic development. Team 2, open space and water resources.
And I think it should also
And
say natural resources.
Because right now,
Right?
that's a chapter that you've taken away that we already have.
Right,
So
okay.
you're gonna incorporate, we would incorporate that in.
Yeah, it might
Okay.
be one-
Yep.
And natural.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Well, we really had the water resources because there was a huge grant to produce that, 150-page chapter.
So 2 will be open space, natural resources, and water resources.
Yes.
3, arts and culture, historic resources, and recreation.
Yeah.
And then 4, community facilities, energy, and transportation. So that's basically what we would be presenting to the planning board. We'll show them, again, the kind of waterfall, the guts of what these will include, so that they don't think that something's been forgotten, but that it will be part of those chapters.
And I get more planning board members involved on the team end
That'd be great.
without having it
Yeah,
be a
especially
public
if they-
meeting when each of the teams has to meet and notice and all that.
Right.
Yeah, and we do hope that happens because, to your point, they're not going to be part of all of this. So it's some of this is going to be really new to them when they come aboard. So if they can at least participate in a couple of the teams or come to the workshops, then they're going to hear what the community is saying. And we'd love to do regular. Is it an agenda item? Regular agenda item to the master plan?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
We can make it that.
It'd be good just so
Usually
that they
we
Because
do
you're
it
an old
updates.
business, it'll be an update,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll just have each, but I think we should assign every board member and alternate to a team.
That'd be
And we'll
great.
just make sure there's, not more than
When does the planning board meet?
2.
Second Tuesday.
of every month, second Tuesday.
Yeah, Summersworth is doing that right now with their housing plan, and they're finding it to be really successful to keep it on the planning board's radar, because they're doing their chapters much differently than you are. They're doing them one at a time, chapter by chapter, like literally nothing else is going on. So they're finishing housing now, and then they're moving to recreation. But for them, then that's manageable. But it's just different. Everybody's different. Rochester's doing it somewhat like that too. They're doing it in 2s and 3s, but they're always going back in pairs, and so, or in dribs and drabs to the planning board for approval. And I think keeping it on their radar is important, so you're not just like, oh, guess what? We have another chapter coming up, because that could be controversial and a lot of work that you put into it.
Yeah. And then for the members bar, that means that each of us, as a planning board, member,
Yeah.
is having a workshop each month.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. Okay.
Can I ask one question too before we move away from this? And maybe this is just an ignorance and like planning in general that others can speak to, but with the riverfront, knowing that, I think it's fair to say there's some grand plans that the town may have about that. What gets realized or not, to be determined. But do you undermine the ability to seek grants or funding if you relegate kind of riverfront design and planning to a theme versus a chapter? Like, does it become harder to say this is truly like something we're trying to do if it's just a flavor that gets sprinkled throughout?
I don't think so. I think setting up expectations, through this whole process, I think is how we present it, going through this update.
Okay.
And I think we hammer down on the themes and how important they are. Everything's important, but, we agree upon the themes, then is an essential, basically binding substance to the master plan. And so I think, if you present it that way, you approach it that way, I don't think so.
Yeah, I actually think it's the opposite. I think what I was envisioning that step-down idea is that you have these great themes we're talking about, and they're so integrated to all the other chapters that are almost like, okay, this is the stuff that we're really like excited about right now in the next 10 years or whatever. So
Yeah.
that would be how I would look at it.
Right.
Thinking about it.
In the in so much of the interim master plan updating is driven by what money is available in order to get chapters updated. But, right, so if you can get a grant funding for, you know, climate resiliency or, you know, sustainability, if it's in multiple chapters, then multiple chapters could be updated under that grant.
Right, yeah, I would argue, yeah.
Relative
if it's
to
a
that
theme,
particular
it's
theme.
more powerful, because it shows you, yeah.
I think
Shows
that
how
it's
important it is.
and this might always be done, but the master plan be created in a way that would be good supporting documentation for grant writing. And maybe it's always done, I just don't know, but it really, hopefully would be done with an eye towards supporting grants.
Yes.
It's really when you're writing grants, it's the rational basis for the community need. You reference the master plan.
And be able to point to some,
Yes, exactly.
numerous things
Yeah,
in the master plan that would really support
right.
that application. So, and maybe that's always done in master plans, but it just seems so important because of the grant opportunities.
Yeah. And what we're doing now is our teams that are doing the planning and our data teams are constantly talking, because hopefully you all know that you have a community profile that we do every year. It's your data snapshot. And that is, I think, a 4-page document that includes your demographics, your housing, your economic vitality, livability. And to your point, there's data in there that's updated every year. And so what we're trying to do now is link the master plan data needs or inclusion, I guess, data points with what those are in those snapshots. So every year you'll have an update automatically, not necessarily of the chapter itself, but at least of the data, so that you're not having, you know what the data is in your master plan, and you can count on that data snapshot giving you most up-to-date, numbers on housing units, or on your population, or your racial makeup, or transportation database, whatever it might be, like, your number of sidewalks. So there are things that we're constantly on your behalf looking after.
Would people be interested in getting a copy of that?
Yeah, I'm
Send
happy to
it
send
Is
it
it
to
the
you.
same one that, I don't think it's called Dread anymore, is it? It's not. Oh,
No,
okay.
right, I know it's not, I know, it
It's
used
not,
to be.
okay. Is that the same one that Dread used to put out, or whatever's now Dread?
Dread, I think they did a version of it, I know,
Okay, that
it was
might
the
be
worst
old.
acronym ever, but at least we all know what we're talking about. I think they may do a version, but we're doing one that's specific, so we actually do 2 levels. One specifically for every community in the region, every single one,
Okay.
and then one for the region, that's more of it's a little bit of a narrative plus the data points.
Yeah.
So it's comparisons, with other communities, like you'll see all
But
communities.
only
compared.
communities under Stratford Regional Planning?
Correct.
Yeah, so we're the outlier of that, because we're the only one in Rockingham County.
Oh, no, we do it for Newmarket as well, all communities.
That's what I'm saying, we're the outlier on Stratford Regional Planning. You don't have any other Rockingham County?
We do.
Oh, you do?
Sorry, I'm still learning. I've only been here since
Okay.
May. I thought there was one more. There were 2 more.
Because historically, we're only under Stratford Regional Planning because of transportation. That's how we ended up with Stratford Regional versus
Yes, you're part of our
Rockingham.
MPO and the region. So
Yeah.
the only one you're not involved with us on in planning is economic development. So for the region,
Yep.
we always do your update, any project. And then for MPO, of course,
Yeah.
we always include. So,
So I think the community profile for Newmarket would be extremely interesting and important to have.
I'm happy to send it.
Typically, there is a demographics chapter, and so I'm gonna guess that's just gonna
We
be
have
sprinkled
one.
throughout.
It's going to be included in housing.
Housing,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Housing
have a
will have
population,
demographics.
It's already in, yeah,
housing.
that's the current one. Slated for updating in 2025. Which will be earlier now.
Yeah, and we're just about to update those community profiles, so you'll
Oh, that'd
see
be
those
great.
in March. But, mhm. Yep, if you just do a search for data, but I'll still send it to everybody after the meeting. They're called data snapshots. I call them community profiles.
Any more thoughts or
I just have
comments on
a
the
question
teams?
for Val. The planning board makeup,
Yeah,
is there gonna be a change this spring? Do you
every
anticipate?
spring,
So just.
but it's not. I think we might have 2. Am I up this year?
So
I
it's
think there are
2.
only 2 of us.
Yeah, I think there's 2. I have
Okay.
to double check who.
Yeah.
So my guess is you're gonna come back, because you said over 20 years. And so you're addicted to it.
It must be.
You must be. And then the other person, have they been on for a long time?
I'd have to look.
I have to see who it is, yeah.
And then we'll have we typically will have a change if, the council rep appointee.
Right.
So.
It's just, I've seen it where you have a master plan process and there's a changeover in the planning board. And next thing you know, they want to start all over again. And it's so horrible.
I don't anticipate
But
that.
it doesn't sound like that's going to happen
No.
here, which is,
And I think we have
really
some
good.
really good alternates now.
Right.
So even if, let's say I decide not to run, I think one of the alternates would run.
Okay.
But I think we're full on alternates.
We're full
Yeah.
board.
We wouldn't
So I
settle-
don't anticipate that. I
Good.
think you'll have continuity.
I'm loving that story.
We wouldn't saddle the council rep on the planning board to committee assignment as well. But you.
No.
It's an awful lot.
No.
Okay. Poor God, poor person, whoever.
Yeah. No, but we'll really involve those alternates.
No, but that's great. No, that's great. I mean, that's new, you have fresh minds and ideas. I like that.
Yeah, and then probably, I think Jeff is our Concom.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be a lot for him. I mean, if he wants to do it, but he's really involved with the ComCon, right?
And other boards too.
You know.
Yeah.
And Jane's on CIP, but she's already decided to already
People are too
participate
much
here,
going
so,
on Anybody running for office.
yeah.
Oh, should we check in with Jane to see if she has
Yeah, I
any?
was just gonna
Yeah,
say.
sorry, Jane, didn't mean to forget you there. Are you still with us? Jane?
She's unmuting herself. Where did I put that mute?
Oh. Can you see on the screen? if
No,
you
it's
can't?
just because of our new,
Interoperability.
yeah. So Jane, are you
You
still
don't
there?
see? We'll
No,
check
we-
in with
yeah.
Jane, but
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Jane already signed up for this, so
Yeah.
she's signing up for that.
And she's
right?
on CIP as well.
Yeah.
that's great. That's a nice connection.
And so I want to say one thing, recommendation from the CIP committee, they would love that implementation guide. They'll really help them drive their decisions.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a shift in approach for the CIP. In the past, they've been used as more of a budgetary board, committee to vet requests. They want to be more of a planning committee now, in the sense that, asking the questions, how are you achieving the goals of the master plan, said department head, where, can you please reference why this request meets the goals of the master plan, how's it achieving that? So they want to make sure that there's a document in place with this update that will help them guide and make those decisions. So I think it's going to be very important to have that, whatever that may look like,
Great. Should we move into survey?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we currently have 92 responses, and they're mostly coming from social media. We're looking into, the people are going to the website, and there have been several clicks, maybe more than several. So we're working on, figuring out the connection there. But we've done a lot of outreach. It's been on at least 2 of the community Facebook pages. And then we sent it out via SRPC, and I think the town also sent it on Facebook, right?
yes, we did.
Yeah.
On the page.
So it seems like social media is working really well, but as we know, as I mentioned when we first started, we did create these, which they have not gone out yet. There is a flyer that also, it's 8.5 by 11. 8.5 by 11, is that how
Yes.
it's printed? Okay. I couldn't remember what we decided on, 11 by 17 or 8.5 by 11. But these are intended to go into cafes and the businesses downtown, at the town clerk's office, and people can click on this through their camera, and there is a link on my email's on the back if they want to, if they don't have a smartphone, then we can do that way too. But most people know how to use a QR code at this point.
And we do also have
Well,
hard copies.
I can guarantee you, my parents will not use a QR code, because they don't even use a cell phone.
Right.
I think
So,
that it's on the
But-
flyer, if I remember right.
Because there's no website on here, because this is a takeaway, right? You're hoping people will just pick this up, as opposed to having just the QR code on a flyer, which the idea is you're right there on the flyer, so you grab it. This is the takeaway.
Yes.
we are also going to have hard copies distributed at different places.
the survey.
Of the survey. So we understand that not everyone will have access to that. So we'll make sure at different locations, public locations, that they're there. For instance, the library, town hall, other
Senior center.
housing authority. All these different places throughout town where people can take the survey and submit them.
We also sent outreach to your partners, your community partners, and the website the link was actually on it. So the SurveyMonkey link, not just the scan code.
So there was one email that came out and then it was taken back? Because,
Oh,
was that because the links
because I
didn't
put the
work?
wrong flyer on it, so I sent
Okay.
it back out with the right flyer. It didn't have the QR code on it.
Okay.
So, but yeah, hopefully you got the second one. Okay, good. Yeah, I recalled it because it.
Yeah, second one, but no
it didn't have the
attachment,
right
right?
flyer on it.
I don't think the second one had an attachment.
It should have had 2 attachments.
On the second one?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll double check. Because I wanted, because the other thing, and hopefully Jane unfortunately is saying, the other thing would be to get it out to like the condo association people, that then they can get it distributed through their associations.
That'd be great.
Because then you'll just hit a lot of people at one
Yeah.
time.
So that's why
Are
we
you
included the
hoping,
link.
Angie, that we take a bunch of those and go to businesses?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking a walk tomorrow downtown, going to all the businesses. so.
All right, so I just want to know where I shouldn't go.
Don't do Main Street. I'll do that.
There you go.
Good
Okay.
luck.
Where else
That's my
do I go?
Gyms.
So outside
Yeah.
of Main Street,
Yeah.
like anything from Elm to whatever the heck, 152 you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. I was gonna just do that stretch.
Okay.
Apartment buildings.
I've got the hardware store.
Superstore.
Yeah, you got it.
supermarkets.
So, Jefferson did a mailer to all taxpayers.
we did
How
talk
are we
about that.
proposing to reach taxpayers who aren't like in town?
Those mailings are really effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're expensive, and
They
I
are
don't think
$50.
they don't have the
And I think the
budget.
elderly too.
And you also, you kind of need to make a card that you can put, just make it a
Right.
postcard.
Yeah,
Well, that's what
we
this
can, and
was.
we can resize this to,
Yeah.
almost that size, just a little bit smaller, but like 3 by 5, I
But
think
do
it
you
is.
have a budget?
We looked at the budget and we decided to wait on this one. So remember, we are going to have another survey.
Right.
So this is just one because of our need to finish the housing and open space. So this is the survey for the other chapters.
Oh, and that might
that
make,
could be
that
the
make
big
more
picture.
sense to
Sense,
do
yeah.
an actual
The big
Yeah.
mailing that we know every resident and taxpayer are getting, because they can cross-reference that with like, auto registrations,
Yeah.
right?
They won't do that.
They won't do that. I don't think they can
Some
by
people throw out their
statute.
tax bills when
Yeah.
they see some piece
Yeah,
of
yeah.
junk, what they think is junk mail.
Yeah.
So many people throw them out.
Yeah.
So they said they did it once, they'll never do it again.
But is it at the clerk's office, a load of these?
Yeah, so we have the flyer right now. We just got those, but there will be.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
you're
we can
gonna
put 'em
hit
there.
town offices, you're gonna
Yep.
hit the library.
Hit the library, bulletin boards, different businesses.
Okay.
Rec center.
Yeah, rec center.
But again,
He said only Main Street, so that means you can do Tucumay
you got to do L&M.
I'm
But
happy to do
again,
that.
you need the technology of the QR code with this.
Right, the only
Or
thing I
I can
was-
see Angela getting a lot of emails.
Yeah, happy.
Where's the survey?
Yep, and that
Well,
could send
yeah,
link.
I think next go round you'd wanna have the survey website or whatever right on there.
Yep.
But,
Come-
this
feedback.
looks real nice and, so there's also the laundromat outside of town.
Yes.
Yep.
Great idea.
There's that, but we talked about, different events.
Mhm.
And we already know, like, I don't know if anyone else saw, we followed Johnny Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see his whole thing
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
about running for governor?
Yep. All right.
All about housing?
Yep.
You haven't. It's great.
Is it, where is it on
He
Instagram?
has his website.
It's like,
Oh, it's on his website?
Well, I don't know, Lisa somehow brought it up on Facebook at like 5 in the morning. Did you see this? I'm like, what? Yeah, now I did, or it was last night, I don't know, it all runs into the other. But I'm just thinking, we talked about having like the bingo session, and he might be very interested in a housing session, and just having a brainstorm on housing. I mean, that could be fun, or at least promote the survey. So I think, if when you go and talk to him, because he's now yours,
yeah. Oh,
I already has a flyer on there, so I already put a flyer.
yeah, I just think he'd be great if he'd get people, because all sorts of people are on his Facebook, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good
It's a great
opportunity.
idea. Get celebrities to
Yeah.
promote it.
Does anyone go down to the athletic club? are also
Or do the
athletic.
golf course.
So the golf course is
great.
closed for the season now. But I'm just thinking
Restaurant's still
that,
open?
Great Bay, you're talking
There's a
about
big
Great
sign
Bay? I
out.
thought that was in
Oh,
Newfields.
there's
No,
some
no, that's
areas
the
are
market.
open.
That's
But that would be a
What?
good location.
Oh,
'cause
I can
you've got-
cover that.
Oh, that'd be
Okay.
good, because
Cool.
there's lots
Good.
of
I'll
people
make
that go
Lisa
in and
do
out of
that.
there.
What else?
Community thrift store.
Yeah, so what yeah, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
You
that's
want
a good
that one?
Sure.
You can take it.
Okay,
Don't need
I'll
to.
take
So
it.
what I'll do is, we'll put a matrix together. I'll send an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, so we
And
don't
then-
overlap.
I can send you the one
Exactly.
that we,
Yeah,
Alright,
we already
so
have, so
I'm,
we'll send that.
All right, so
Updated.
Sylvia and Bart will coordinate
Yeah.
distribution of
that'd be great.
the
I'm
QR,
on-
I'm gonna call it the QR card.
I'm on Great Bay.
But I think we talked about the audience, you know, right?
Yep,
Okay, I think the big one that you're gonna be missing with this is the elderly, so that's where you wanna make sure that that gets out there.
Yeah, and what I could do is modify the flyer to include a website, because that's easier, because you're printing it off ad hoc, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'll do that tomorrow
You know
morning and
who'd
send
be
it.
great is,
School department.
yeah, they're good.
that too.
Now, the healthcare, Lamprey. A lot of people going in and
Yeah.
out over there. I'll take it. Lamprey, healthcare. Yeah, they have a PT downstairs. I'll
Yeah.
talk to those gals.
That's a great idea.
So the flyer currently doesn't have the website,
I thought it did, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if it does, but it will by
Okay.
tomorrow morning.
and then maybe if you could just resend out that email?
Yep.
And then, because that would be the one I would forward to, like, the management company to get out to all the residents, so
Yeah,
that you'll
sure.
hit 100 people there.
Yeah, I'll resend it out tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Sue, where
with
were you
the,
going?
community program.
Where, did you say you were going somewhere?
No, I said I can do my HOA, which is discuss
Yeah, perfect.
Oh,
And you've got
nice.
40-something, right?
our
Yeah.
sign.
Excellent,
Okay.
that's great.
I think, we good on this?
I just wanted to mention that, you know, where we're at with this and brainstorm any other ideas on ways to get the word out. So, we're always willing to have take in other ideas. What I'd like to do in the next, probably let it up for like 2 weeks and then start to look at the demographics, like who's taking the survey and who are we missing, what, and then we can streamline and focus our approach on places where those people are, so that we can make sure that they're at least seeing it. We can't force them to take the survey, obviously, but we'd like to make sure that we're at least reaching them.
So at this point, we're not looking to, like, sponsor some kind of event to get a survey done on outreach and events? We're just focusing on outreach?
I think right now, the initial outreach, and then, as we, move forward, I think, events, I think, if I understand this correctly, is, those other outreaches like bingo or, whatever, it'll be later on. Right now, we're
Okay.
just pushing the survey.
So we're good right now with
Yeah.
this, okay.
Unless Johnny wanted to host a trivia.
He's so small in there, maybe we do
Yeah,
it
he
in the mill
just
space.
doesn't-
if we're
yeah,
gonna
you'd have to do
anything.
something
to
like
host
that.
He
it
might
somewhere
be
else.
willing to sponsor something.
Yeah.
Or the restaurant. There's so many good restaurants. I bet you we could really have some good sponsors
Yeah,
for a
Good call.
fun event.
yeah.
Is this going out in the e-news for Tim? Tim to
Yeah,
put
that
out?
Yep.
would be,
Yeah,
Yep, it's it.
Oh, and we
I
will
already
be
put the link
talking-
in the my department report, so, it's there.
Yeah, we
Anyone
forgot
can
to add that Tim will be joining us at our
Yep.
staff meeting on Monday with Bart and Lindsay to talk about ways to get it on the community channel as well, which that will be where the website
We're
is.
thinking of a promo video too,
Mhm.
so.
I'm excited about
yeah.
that. That's gonna be awesome.
So, put it on the website and also on TV, our Channel 13. So people watch that still.
they
Yeah.
definitely watch it. They
Yeah.
would like to hear what people are saying on it, despite what you guys think is not the case, because same last night.
It's
Nielsen
pretty
ratings.
It's perfect if you're watching the YouTube video.
Okay,
If you're home watching the show, you're not hearing it,
that's good.
so.
Good to
So
know.
we had a
All right,
couple items, and I know it's after 6:30, so, we are not quite, I just wanted to see, you to see where we're at with this. We're not, there's no internet.
Okay. We can share it later.
Yeah, I can share this. It's still a work in progress, and apologies, but I just realized this doesn't have internet access, so. But we're working with the town manager and with Bart and Lindsay and others on this, so TBD, it will be
Okay.
coming up soon. I'm gonna rework your work plan, and this was just for conversation starters. I always like to, this is how I design my months, so I'm a planner and I can't help it. But I also wanted to build expectations for our work together and make sure that you feel that your time is being used wisely and that we are using your time wisely as a team to maximize our time together, maximize the ideas that are coming out, how those ideas are coming out, how it's incorporated into the actual writing of the master plan. So ideally, every session has some sort of engagement discussion, again, because you as ambassadors and folks that are going to events or speaking on behalf of the master plan know what's going on all the time and can speak with a high level of comfort about the project. So always having some sort of engagement, and then a team update for the master plans once those are formed. So obviously we need to get planning board buy-in on the actual chapters, and then we can form those at the next meeting. But ideally, each meeting has something, and so open to total suggestions on what those look like, as well as what your agendas look like. So what does the work plan itself look like? And I just did those 4 months, just because that's all I could do on the screen. Otherwise, the print gets really tiny. And, you know, lots can change in 4 months, and I think looking out 4 months is probably realistic. But also, I'd love for ideas of what you think our January meeting could look like. So ideally, this is what I come up with, or sorry, I shouldn't say ideally. This is what I came up with for January, is talking about the survey. We had talked about checking in whether we should extend it. So I think we're going to check in as a team and see, but then if we do decide to extend it, we would bring that to you all as well. And then upcoming events, and start talking about a date for the community workshop. So again, the community workshop, this first one will be focused on open space and water resources now, hopefully, and housing and vision. So we want to start looking into, I know we start looking at the calendar a little bit to see what that looks like, and then but bring some proposed dates to you to actually set that. Because the further we can do that, the more we can start to promote it and get stuff out and get it on people's radar. And then February, again, talking about the same type of thing, but digging into like what does the visioning exercise look like, you know, and thinking about how do we engage people on what Newmarket looks like in 10 years at that workshop, and then other outreach for the community workshop.
And do you have a question for you?
Yeah, of course.
So considering the real quick turnaround for the 2 chapters,
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess we need to have the master plan teams for team 1 and team 2 already figured out by like early to mid-January at latest.
Yes.
So what are you anticipating? How is that happening?
So let me make a recommendation, because that's where I was heading to. So our next meeting's the 10th.
Yep.
So let's put this on the agenda for our planning board meeting on the 9th, because I think we're going to be light on that
We just
meeting
have one
anyway.
item right now.
Just have one meeting, have that on the 9th, have this as an agenda item. Angela, are you available, January 9th?
Actually, we have 0, because I got continued to February.
Oh, you're right, yeah,
Yeah.
because we should
So
get
we
see.
can
So this would be
have-
perfect, we'll almost have it
Yes.
as a
Yeah.
workshop. Okay, so let's have the planning board meeting on the 9th be the workshop. Well, it's a business meeting, but
Yeah.
deal with this. Then, and then this committee on the 10th will have the update from there.
Great.
And then we'll also know what members might want to serve on some teams. Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll get something out early to the members about that. And then to your point, by the 10th, on the 10th, we really should have the teams, the people who are forming the teams, and do you
Yep.
want us all to individually reach out to you? I mean, obviously, you know what team you want to be on, right?
So can I speak to the open space specifically for a sec? Because
Absolutely.
we've already, you know, we have a specific, we've already started going down the path of looking at the master plan, looking at the last plan and the maps and recommendations and which ones we've done and which ones we haven't since the last plan. So is the Conservation Commission the team and then other people can join, or we need to subset, or what?
That's a great idea.
What were you guys thinking about?
So is Jeff already on?
Jeff is,
He's,
yeah, it's basically we have.
because you're doing it as your commission?
As a commission meeting,
Okay.
right? So tomorrow night, we have another session just for the master plan as part of our
And-
meeting.
Are any members of the public coming to speak about it?
They can, but.
Yeah,
No.
but they
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
been.
No.
Right.
Oh.
So, not yet. So we could probably do some kind of
But I'm good with that approach.
Does that work? Because I think having separate meetings from that
Right.
is
Yes.
a little bit
Yeah,
too much.
'cause you've been
we'd be
focusing on
talking
that
about
as
the
a
same
team.
stuff at two
And now
different
that you've
meetings, but
added water resources to
Right,
it,
we
or
can
hopefully
bring
added.
people in for like an hour or two who want
Yeah.
to join,
Yeah.
like
That makes
Don
sense.
or Lindsay, you know,
Yeah.
people come to that part of the meeting to talk about some of the water stuff or.
I think it's good use of time.
And
That
then-
works, that
Yeah.
works for me.
And then, so Ellen, you can take the lead on that?
Sure.
Great.
Great. Is there, I mean, do you want to talk about housing now? I mean, we do need that team to move forward, so if people want to raise their hands for that now, the idea would be that first meeting, we would be prepared with the data to actually have a
Yeah.
good discussion. So there would be SRPCs realizing that this is going to be this pretty heavy lift on our end too, which we're ready for.
Yes, and I'm happy
So-
to serve on that.
Okay.
And then I'm sure we can get at least one or two other planning board members, and then maybe, okay, Sylvia,
Sylvia?
Great.
we know what team you're gonna be on already.
Mike, do you have any
Hey, Mike?
preference?
Great.
Well, economic development,
Yeah.
that's now a theme, right?
No.
No,
it's still a
no, so Mike, you'll be on team one too.
Sure.
And then there'll be a good liaison with NBA.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear that last part, sorry.
So Mike will also serve on team one.
Oh, great. And you don't need to choose a team now, by the way. It's just, I was
No,
just
but just
curious
think
about
about
those
it
two
for-
since
Yeah, team 2 would probably be my selection as well between
Okay.
riverfront conservation and
Perfect.
my day job as a civil engineer for public water systems. So
Totally. Great.
Oh, that might be a little team four too.
If we're picking, then I would go with
Could
2
be.
and 4.
2 and 4?
Perfect.
yeah,
Okay.
extra what?
And right now, that's the focus, right? Team three is not, that's the next stage focus.
Yeah, we'll probably
Yeah,
pick those
okay.
in January/February.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I don't wanna
on that,
overwhelm you
we
all.
would involve the Arts and Culture Commission, the historic.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
trying to get on their January agenda to, establish that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so ideally, we would solidify all of them in January, and that's why
Okay,
going
and
to a
then
meeting on the
reach
9th is
it,
perfect.
maybe get a representative from, the Historical Society
I'd
on that as
consider
well,
being
because they've already
team
done a lot of
3
that work.
as well.
Team 3 as well.
On three, good.
Okay.
Yeah, Bart, building on Ellen's idea, I mean, does Arts and Tourism Committee play the central part as Team 3? If
Yeah.
That's already what they're discussing. so.
Right. Yep, okay.
Yeah,
We're good on all that?
Okay. So the idea
Um,
is I'll actively make the changes to that screenshot and then send it to you that night
Good.
on the planning board. So I'll be behind the scenes making those changes, and then you'll all have that for the meeting on the Wednesday.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, then we can work with this. We won't have to
All right, so January meets
do
the
this.
10th. That wraps up regular business, I think. Were there meeting minutes from the last
No,
meeting?
Not yet, so.
Okay, so
Yep.
we'll move that to the January 10th. And there's no one from the public here. I'm just jumping around on the agenda.
Yep.
And we all pledge to uphold the U.S. Constitution, so let's pass over that one too, because I forgot to do that. Is that a town, is
It's
that
a
a
town
town
thing, yeah.
regulation thing for all boards?
Yes,
Okay, we missed that. I'm a bad chair.
it's okay. So, Jared?
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
By Ellen, second. By Mike, all those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you everyone for your time and your service to the town.
Does some of the people want to take just a couple?